island. Here they found 4 shipwrecked youths who proved to be the sons of Phrixus, and were greeted by Jason as his cousins. On ascertaining the object of the expedition, they volunteered to accompany the Argo, and to show the heroes the way to Colchis. They also informed them that the Golden Fleece was guarded by a fearful dragon, that King Aetes was extremely cruel, and, as the son of Apollo, was possessed of superhuman strength. Arrival at Colchis. Taking with them the 4 newcomers, they journeyed on and soon came in sight of the snow-capped peaks of the Caucasus, when towards evening the loud flapping of wings was heard overhead. It was the giant eagle of Prometheus on his way to torture the noble and long-suffering Titan, whose fearful groans soon afterwards fell upon their ears. That night they reached their journey's end, and anchored in the smooth waters of the river Phasis. On the left bank of this river they beheld Ceuta, the capital of Colchis, and on their right a wide field and the sacred grove of Ares, where the Golden Fleece, suspended from a magnificent oak tree, was glittering in the sun. Jason now filled a golden cup with wine, and offered a libation to Mother Earth, the gods of the country, and the shades of those of the heroes who had died on the voyage. Next morning a council was held, in which it was decided that before resorting to forcible measures, kind and conciliatory overtures should first be made to King Aetes, in order to induce him to resign the Golden Fleece. It was arranged that Jason, with a few chosen companions, should proceed to the royal castle, leaving the remainder of the crew to guard the Argo. Accompanied therefore by Telamon and Augeas and the 4 sons of Phryxus, he set out for the palace. When they arrived in sight of the castle, they were struck by the vastness and massiveness of the building, at the entrance to which sparkling fountains played in the midst of luxuriant and park-like gardens. Here the king's daughters, Chalciope and Medea, who were walking in the grounds of the palace, met them. The former, to her great joy, recognized in the youths who accompanied the hero her own long-lost sons, whom she had mourned as dead, whilst the young and lovely Medea was struck with the noble and manly form of Jason. The news of the return of the sons of Phryxus soon spread through the palace, and brought Aeetes himself to the scene, whereupon the strangers were presented to him, and were invited to a banquet which the king ordered to be prepared in their honor. All the most beautiful ladies of the court were present at this entertainment, but in the eyes of Jason none could compare with the king's daughter, the young and lovely Medea. When the banquet was ended, Jason related to the king his various adventures, and also the object of his expedition, with the circumstances which had led to his undertaking it. Aeetes listened in silent indignation to this recital, and then burst out into a torrent of invectives against the Argonauts and his grandchildren, declaring that the fleece was his rightful property, and that on no consideration would he consent to relinquish it. Jason, however, with mild and persuasive words, contrived so far to conciliate him that he was induced to promise that if the heroes could succeed in demonstrating their divine origin by the performance of some task requiring superhuman power, the fleece should be theirs. The task proposed by Aeetes to Jason was that he should yoke the 2 brazen-footed, fire-breathing oxen of the king, which had been made for him by Hephaestus, to his ponderous iron plough. Having done this, he must till with them the stony fields of Ares, and then sow in the furrows the poisonous teeth of a dragon, from which armed men would rise. These he must destroy to a man, or he himself would perish at their hands. When Jason heard what was expected of him, his heart for a moment sank within him, but he determined, nevertheless, not to flinch from his task, but to trust to the assistance of the gods and to his own courage and energy. Jason plows the field of Ares. Accompanied by his two friends Telamon and Augeas, and also by Argus, the son of Chalciope, Jason returned to the vessel for the purpose of holding a consultation as to the best means of accomplishing these perilous feats. Argus explained to Jason all the difficulties of the superhuman task which lay before him, and pronounced it as his opinion that the only means by which success was possible was to enlist the assistance of the Princess Medea, who was a priestess of Hecate and a great enchantress. His suggestion meeting with approval, he returned to the palace, and by the aid of his mother an interview was arranged between Jason and Medea, which took place at an early hour next morning in the temple of Hecate. A confession of mutual attachment took place, and Medea, trembling for her lover's safety, presented him with a magic salve which possessed the property of rendering any person anointed with it invulnerable for the space of 1 day against fire and steel, and invincible against any adversary, however powerful. With this salve she instructed him to anoint his spear and shield on the day of his great undertaking. She further added that when, after having ploughed the field and sown the teeth, armed men should arise from the furrows, he must on no account lose heart, but remember to throw among them a huge rock, over the possession of which they would fight amongst themselves, and their attention being thus diverted, he would find it an easy task to destroy them. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Jason thanked her in the most earnest manner for her wise counsel and timely aid. At the same time he offered her his hand, and promised her he would not return to Greece without taking her with him as his wife. Next morning Aeetes, in all the pomp of state, surrounded by his family and the members of his court, repaired to a spot whence a full view of the approaching spectacle could be obtained. Soon Jason appeared in the field of Ares, looking as noble and majestic as the god of war himself. In a distant part of the field the brazen yokes and the massive plough met his view, but as yet the dread animals themselves were nowhere to be seen. He was about to go in quest of them when they suddenly rushed out from a subterranean cave, breathing flames of fire and enveloped in a thick smoke. The friends of Jason trembled, but the undaunted hero, relying on the magic powers with which he was imbued by Medea, seized the oxen one after the other by the horns, and forced them to the yoke. Near the plough was a helmet full of dragon's teeth, which he sowed as he ploughed the field, whilst with sharp pricks from his lance he compelled the monstrous creatures to draw the plough over the stony ground, which was thus speedily tilled. While Jason was engaged sowing the dragon's teeth in the deep furrows of the field, he kept a cautious lookout lest the germinating giant brood might grow too quickly for him, and as soon as the 4 acres of land had been tilled, he unyoked the oxen and succeeded in frightening them so effectually with his weapons that they rushed back in terror to their subterranean stables. Meanwhile, armed men had sprung up out of the furrows, and the whole field now bristled with lances. But Jason, remembering the instructions of Medea, seized an immense rock and hurled it into the midst of these earth-born warriors, who immediately began to attack each other. Jason then rushed furiously upon them, and after a terrible struggle not one of the giants remained alive.